What's up, guys? Welcome to Real Men Talk. I am so excited for this week's episode. We're introducing our new co-host, Kyler Sal, and we have got a guest for you that I am so excited for you guys to hear. His name is Mike Vipperman. I cannot wait for you guys to meet him. We're going to jump right into this. Let's get started on Real Men Talk.
Welcome to Real Men Talk, discussing the tough issues facing men and their families every day. Here are your hosts.
What is up, guys? Here we go. I am so excited. So I want to introduce everybody. We got Kyler Sauer, our new co-host.
What's up, guys?
All right, and our guest, Mike Vipperman. Mike, we are so excited to have you on here. How are you today, man?
Man, I'm doing really good. I may be more excited than you are, bro.
Dude, I am so pumped. So, a little backstory. Now, I remember when everything had happened, which I'm not gonna ruin that story. I'm not gonna ruin your testimony. I want you to share that. But I remember everything happened. So I kind of started following you on Facebook, and and I just kind of kept up. Well, then when was Fields of Faith?
Yeah, back in the fall last year, 2022 in the fall. Yep.
Yeah, in the fall. And you had the opportunity to speak at Fields of Faith, and I was there with my kids, and I was so impressed with your testimony and everything that you represent, you know what I mean, for the glory of God. And I was like, this testimony has got to get out. And we are excited to have you on here.
And I'm excited as well. Thrilled.
Okay, well, let's jump right into it. Why don't you give us just a little bit of backstory of what your testimony and other things.
Yeah, man. First of all, just Anthony, Kyler, man, it's an honor to be able to come on here and just have a conversation with you guys. And give glory to God through this whole recording. And so, man, personally, I'll just kind of tell you, man, I'm married. Been married 17 years. I got a beautiful wife, 2 children that I adore. One is a sophomore. She started driving this year, and so that's been challenging in itself. But, man, just a blessing to my life. My 6th grade son, he's involved in everything under the sun. and so, man, we teach. Me, my wife's a counselor. I teach as well. And then we coach. She's a track coach for the high school. And then I just kind of fill in wherever's needed in the school district. But I've coached everything from football, basketball, golf, you name it. Man, So we're heavily involved.
Trades, huh?
Yeah, come on, man. It's what I've learned, man, in my short 40 years. I turned 40 this year, but my short 40 years, I've learned, man, that God gives you platforms, and sports is a platform if you can look at it like that, and it really allows you to connect with a lot of people, which kind of brings me into kind of where we're at ministry wise. I'm a local ambassador for the area for FCA, which is Fellowship for Christian Athletes. And, man, we just connect with local schools, sporting affiliations, and just connect, start Bible study groups. We call them huddles. And like you said, we do Fields of Faith. We had 5 of those spread throughout the regions, and had over 5,000 people attend, with all together.
Wow.
Over 600 kids or athletes, or however you perspective, but give their hearts to Jesus Christ. So within those Fields of Faith. So, man, we just come on, man. We give God the glory for everything that He's done. But yeah. So a little bit about my testimony. Part of it, and a big part of it, started in 2019. It was the first day of fall, and I fell out of a deer stand. And was super excited, man. It was the first morning I was able to go out and sit in the deer stand and see if I was going to see any creatures, out in God's wilderness. And
that's right.
Next thing I know, I'm falling from about 20 feet, and dark still. I went out in the morning, and man, I landed in a very, very bad, awkward position. My body got turned around, and I landed more on my shoulders. Came down on my shoulders, kind of the back of my neck, and I broke my back, broke my spinal cord in 3 places. And from my chest down, had no feeling, had nothing. Man, it was only by the grace of God, the supernatural miracle power of God that I was able to, I had function in my arms. And so I had my phone in my pocket, and I was able to dig my phone out, and I called my wife, and long story short, she had no idea where I was, but my son did. And so my son pretty much led my wife, the paramedics, everybody to where I was at, the tree that I was laying beside. And 12 minutes later, we had paramedics on the scene, and 32 minutes later, there was a helicopter landing in the field next to where I was at. And they life flighted me to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, where they knew at that point they could not do anything at that facility. And they went ahead and sent me to Barnes Jewish Hospital, which is in St. Louis, very, very well-known hospital. And man, there was doctors, amazing nurses. The staff up there was absolutely just phenomenal. And they did everything that they could, according to, medical science and MRI, CAT scans, all that stuff, and, but they set my family down, set my wife down, and said, Mike he'll never walk again. He's paralyzed from about his chest down. The T6, thoracic, 6, 7, and 8 is where the breaks were. And, right. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to take him into surgery, and we'll align his spinal cord up. We'll put rods and screws in, and we'll go from there.
So,
go ahead. Yep.
So give me your mindset at this point when they come in, the doctors come in, and I've had doctors come in and give me bad news before,
right, right,
and that's a story for another time. Give me your mindset at this point.
So yeah, man, my mindset at that point was. And I shared this perspective in a meeting just recently about sometimes our faith isn't where it needs to be, right or wrong, okay? Either place. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times when you're in that situation, a bad situation where it's affecting you and all you're hearing is negative, and then you're seeing in the natural, in the physical, what's going on, whether it be a physical ailment or, whatever it is. A lot of times our faith isn't where it be. And that's exactly where I was at. Man, my faith was weak in that because I'm like, man, I can't feel nothing. I had no function. And right. So the doctors are saying this, and I'm over here just, I'm discouraged, so many things going through my mind. I'll never throw a football with my son. I'll never be able to ride a bike with my kid. You just go on, and just these thoughts going through your mind.
Yeah.
But it was in that, man, I looked over and I made eye contact with my wife. My wife just kind of had that moment where her faith connected with what God was wanting to do. And she looked at the doctor and she said, well, we're not believing that report, and we're just believing that he's going to walk out of here. And it was quiet. It was an awkward, quiet moment because you had the doctors, all the neurosurgeons, everything that was there. And it was in that moment that the doctor looked at my wife and said, are you okay? There might be a sense of denial or, and the doctor tried to go that route. And my wife said, I'm perfectly fine. We got a room full of prayer warriors out in the waiting room, and we're just expecting for God to do a miracle in this surgery. And then that's what led right into the surgery. So we go into the surgery, and it was a 10-hour operation. And I had one thing they had to take care of first, and that was the collapsed lung. And there's a lot of other stuff other than the break, but that was kind of the big miracle of what God did. Mm-hmm. But they they pulled out like 6 or 7 different bone fragments that were actually lodged within the spinal cord. And so once they found the last bone fragment that was in the spinal cord, he said it was about 6 hours into the surgery. They actually kind of semi-woke me up. I don't remember it, but they had neurotransmitters hooked on my feet, on my head. And they said they pulled the last bone fragment that they could see and locate, and they asked me to wiggle my toes. And apparently my left foot, I could wiggle my toes on my left foot. And it was in that moment he said, "We're done here. We've done all we can do. Let's go ahead and wrap it up." So then from that point on, it took about 4 more hours, and they got the rods in. So 2 10-inch titanium rods, and 13 screws later, they sewed me up and wheeled me back to ICU room 12.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that process there, you know, I mean, because it was a process. This whole thing has been a process, but so God actually began to heal my nerves from that point on and bring back the sensation, the coordination, directly at the beginning of that. You know, after I come out of surgery, and learn how to walk again. You know, everything. It was like a computer being rebooted. I mean, everything had to be reset, and it was just a brand new start. And little did I know, it wasn't just a physical restarting; it was a spiritual restarting as well. And I don't know if we'll get into that, but there was a lot of things. Because during that season of my life, I was pastoring. We was pastoring full time. I was teaching full time, coaching. We had pastored a church called Revive Church, and we were rocking and rolling, man. God was doing amazing things, and you know, you come to that mountain right in the middle of that, and it began to change some things. But yeah, so God did a miracle, man. God healed my body. He began to just take me through the process of drawing closer to Him. Closer than I'd ever been to that point in my life. Like I said, even through pastoring and all that stuff. And, but it was just a narrowing of just a focusing of Jesus, and man, just sitting at His feet, and couldn't do much else, man. So that's been a little over 3 years ago.
Right. And you know, you were talking about it was not only a physical transformation in your healing, but it was also a spiritual healing. And you'll see that a lot. I experienced something similar, not like breaking my back or anything like that, but I remember God put me in a place where I had no other option. But to completely put my trust in God or fail. There's no other option. And He puts you in these places to test you. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, God, do you think I'm Job? You know, and I would imagine that, you know, the thoughts through this process, you know, because it was from the time that you got out of surgery to the time that you walked out of the hospital. Okay. How long was that?
So, So when I came out of surgery, obviously I had to come off all the anesthesia, you know, all that stuff, and kind of let that. But I was on a lot of different drugs.
Right.
And I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that your body goes through when you go through a trauma, and so, and thank God for that. I mean, I don't know what I would have done without, you know, being able to have that medicine and that different things administered during that time. But
absolutely.
So I came out, and the very next day, I call it day 2, right? Day 2, the nurse comes in that morning and a whole staff, whole PT staff, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to get you up today." And in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, I can't even move my right leg right now. Like, how? I can't. There's no way." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to stand you up today." And again, my faith still, even with being able to move the left foot at this point and a little bit of my left leg, like just a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to happen. But everybody that was in the room,
Right.
like family and friends, they were like, "Oh, God's going to do it. You're going to," and I was like, "All right, let's do it." And so, I mean, if you were outside looking in, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I just stood up. They helped me stand up. But
Right.
internally, what happened, just, man, in my spirit, man, I was just like, "Lord, you're doing something bigger than I can even fathom right now." And day 2 was a turning point for me spiritually. Day 2, I began to really connect with what the Lord was doing. It was all Him. I mean, at that
Right.
point, there was nothing that I could do. And so every day from that point on, from day 2 to day 7, day 7 is when I got transported to my PT facility, which was in Cape Girardeau. And I walked
Right.
for the first time on day 8. After the surgery. So day 8, I was walking, and I was supposed to, when they transported me, they're like, you could be in physical therapy for, 3 to 6 months. And praise God, I was there for 7 days, and I was going home.
7 days.
So 7 days, man. Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Praise God, man. It was, and again, when you're in it, and like everything was moving so fast, man, when God does something, it's so big and it's seamless, and it's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't process everything God was doing in that moment. I couldn't,
Right.
it was, everything was just going so fast. There was the healing that was happening. And it wasn't until I got home and really just started to process all the Lord had done. I'm just amazed, because it, because you go from, and just like you said, and doctors, I love them. I thank the Lord for them. But a lot of times, if you're only gonna tell the patient what you are seeing according to medical science and maybe the scans,
Right.
But the Lord has something different in mind, and so it was really cool, man. It was just so awesome being able to obviously be a part of that, be the main, I guess, character, but being able to see the beginning of no hope, to walk in this thing out. And 3 years later, man, last night I played basketball, half court basketball with a bunch of guys, and just back doing what I love to do. And, and me and my son's playing on 4-on-4 pickup game together, and he knocks down a shot, and we're giving each other high five. And I'm just like, God, you are amazing. You're so good.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That is so awesome.
And Mike, what sticks out to me about that story is, if we go all the way back to day 2, like, your story could have been completely different if you would not have had that mindset of, I can just stand up. Because, I mean, the actions at the beginning of your story, I mean, it wrote the rest of how the ending was going to go. You could have just laid in that bed and you could have said, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. You could have been Peter. You could have walked out on the water, and then as soon as things got scary, you could have went straight on down, but you didn't. Yeah. And then second part, you said 7 days later. I mean, you had that number of completion there. I mean, he started it, and then he's going to complete it at the end. And you had firm faith, and you believed it, and it's awesome. I mean, because it's so important at the beginning of any story that God writes for us. Doesn't matter if it's our testimony, if it's somebody else's testimony, we're talking to them about it. Those beginning steps, it's just taking that step of faith. And I mean, for yours, it was just standing up, because you had no idea. You could have went straight to the ground, but you didn't. You just got up and you did it. And I mean, I think that's awesome for everybody to hear that. I mean, it's the journey's important, but the beginning is just as important too.
Yeah. And Kyler, it's one of those things where the only thing, the best way I can relate that mentality that I had in the beginning, like I said, my faith was not where it needed to be until that moment, but it's kind of like in Mark, the paraplegic that could not get to Jesus, right? So he had some dudes around him that they were determined to get him where he needed to be. And that was really that's the scene of what I remember the first couple of days. Like everybody else that was around me, family, my wife, kids, in-laws, like people that were close to me, they had the faith, man, to step in and
Yes.
just ask God for a miracle. And you're right, but there has to come that moment where you got to be willing to stand. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a testimony in itself, because, I mean, those are the people you chose to surround yourself with. We've got to learn to surround ourselves with those kinds of people, because, I mean, it's so important to make sure that the people around us have the same faith that we want to have. That way they can challenge us and continue us to grow. I mean, that's awesome that even that you had those people that were going to challenge you, and they weren't going to stop until they saw what the ending they knew God could do.
Right, to surround ourselves with those people that have the faith to carry us up to the rooftop and to lower us down before Jesus.
Come on. It's good.
Yeah. So question. So looking back, obviously from the moment that you hit the ground and you realized, oh no, I can't feel anything. Okay.
Right.
To the moment that you walked out of that hospital. Okay. The man that walked out of that hospital has to be different than the man that hit the ground.
Yeah.
Kind of give me that playthrough there. I remember. Let me give you a little. So I remember going through what it was a year process for me of a healing, and I remember looking back. And I remember saying, I would go through that again to come out to the man that come out of that.
Yeah.
Because spiritually, there was a transformation, kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
For sure. I mean, the transformation with me, and I don't know how theologically sound this is, but I'll just be as honest as I can be. I believe that it was a saving or salvation moment. Even though I'd already given my heart to the Lord, I loved Jesus, serving in the ministry, everything else. But it was like the saving grace of God that I fell out of that tree.
Right.
And here's why. Because it totally put into perspective a kingdom alignment into my heart. Which opens up a whole nother conversation about where I was before, the night before that happened. Me and my wife had a conversation. We were celebrating my daughter's birthday, and we were setting in a trampoline sky zone, jump house. And we're sitting in the seats, and me and my wife are talking, having a conversation about just life, how busy we are, how we feel like we're just running the rat race of life. We're trying to keep up. We're trying to do this. We're trying to please everyone around us when our home, and I'm just being transparent, our home was falling apart. Our marriage was not where it needed to be. It was not healthy. And, our exact words the night before was, something's got to change. Something's got to change. And then the next morning I fall out of a tree and break my back. And so it was not only like I said in a minute, it wasn't just a physical healing that God took me through. Man, it was a spiritual transformation. He took me from pretty much worshiping ministry, building a ministry, to focusing on Him. Matthew 6:33, seeking first the kingdom of God and His right, and then family, and then having my marriage. My marriage should be strong. My marriage should be healthy. I need to be a dad, a father to my kids. And I'm kind of going off, but there's so much to that when that accident happened, in the moment it's horrible, it's tragic, it's trauma, it hurts. You don't know what's next. But looking back, I can honestly say, man, it saved my life. It saved my life.
Absolutely. Man, I am your testimony is amazing, and what the Lord has done through your life is absolutely phenomenal. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the after part of walking out of that. You talked a little bit about beforehand what your life was like, and what the ministry side and stuff like that took place after the fall.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
This portion of Real Men Talk is brought to you by the Jeweler's Bench. They are a full-service jewelry store offering many styles of gold, silver, diamonds, and gemstones. And all jewelry repair is done in-house, so you can get your treasured pieces back as soon as possible. They are also a licensed Citizen Watch dealer. Make sure to visit them today at 1353 North Westwood or call 573-686-1522. Call or stop in and thank them for bringing you Real Men Talk.
If you want to join in the conversation, join us on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. We gather with other like-minded Christian brothers to discuss hard-hitting topics that affect men on a daily basis and use a biblical approach to overcome common strongholds that affect our families. We show men the importance of being the spiritual leader of their home and what it means to be a real man in the eyes of Christ. Join us at the Palace of Praise, located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. We meet in room 400 every Thursday. Come be a part of the discussion.
Mr. Johnson, there's an angel here to see you.
An angel?
Wings, halo, glowing. It's really cool.
Send him in.
Hi, I'm the Angel Floyd.
Okay, can I help you?
Yeah, I just need to finish this checklist.
All right.
Let's see. You do have identification on you, right?
Sure.
Oh, good. No need for dental records. Does your wife know where you keep the checkbook?
No, I take care of the bills.
Okay. Is the number of your life insurance company known to your family?
I don't even know the number. What is this about?
Just one more question. Have you considered where you will spend eternity?
Not really.
Oh, you may want to do that. And may I suggest you call your wife and let her know where you keep the checkbook?
I'll tell her when I get home.
It would be better if you could do that in the next 53 minutes.
No man knows his time. If you were to die today, would you be ready to meet God? Another message from Lifeline Productions, located on the web at lifelinepro.com.
This portion of the Real Men Talk is brought to you by R.L. Persons Construction. For over 29 years, they have been a regional leader completing projects that include private, municipal, state, and federal agencies of all types. From mass grading, utilities, concrete of all types, to buildings both conventional and pre-engineered steel. You can expect excellence in all aspects of their finished work. Contact them today at 573-686-1323 and let them know you appreciate them bringing you Real Men Talk. If you have a question about this week's show, please drop us an email to realmen@palaceofpraise.com. We would love to hear from you. And now back to the show with Anthony and Kyler.
All right, what up, man? The first half of this podcast has been so great. We're back with Mike Vipperman, and we are so excited to hear your testimony of what God's done through your life. And so before the podcast, I had said that I want to know a little bit more about the man after the fall, ministry, and you know that transformation. After that transformation happened, you know what did you do with the gift that God gave you?
So it's a great question. It's a great question, Anthony. And one of the things that the Lord began to take me directly into after that accident, coming through that healing, that process of healing, because like I said before, it was, even though God had touched my body physically, there was a lot of things He began to dig out of my heart and dig out of my life, because I actually couldn't do anything else. Like, God had slowed my life down to the point where it was me and Him.
Right.
And so it really began to expose a lot of things, in my life. Not gross sin, not anything like that, but just things that come down to, what kind of a husband was I being up until that point? Like up to that point, I've been married. We were going on 14, 15 years, and wasn't anything that I was doing immorally, but just the health of our marriage. I wasn't being the husband that God had called me to be to my wife. Same thing with my kids, man. My kids they knew me more as Pastor Mike than Dad, Right. And so there was a lot of things that God began to reteach me and correct me in. And that was kind of the biggest change that really began to come out of this accident. And it started in my home. It started right here at the living room table. We started having meals together. We started making time, praying with our kids. And you're like, man, wasn't you a pastor? Well, yeah, but I was so busy doing everything everywhere else that my home was falling apart. And so no one knew that. No one could see that from the outside looking in, but God did. God knew. And, we've talked about this so much, but, and it's kind of now we're obviously God healed me but we like, man, did I have to break my back for me to figure out that things needed to be realigned, spiritually speaking, in our home? And the answer is yes. I mean, as bad or maybe as hard as that sounds, the answer is yes. And I thank God for that. I thank the Lord that we went through that.
Absolutely.
And that's,
I think a lot of times as men, I think a lot of times as men, we make things a lot more difficult than what they have to be. God knows. He knows we're stubborn and we're hard-headed, and it literally takes almost an act of God to change our direction.
Yeah, it does.
When I was thinking earlier when you were talking to your wife about how something needed to change when you were at a Sky Zone or wherever you're at one of the trampoline parks. Yeah. And then I thought to myself, man, I bet that was one of those times where he was probably like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. Because then he fell out for you the next day. And I was like, oh, man. Yeah. I mean, it came out great on the other side, but when you're sitting there thinking, you're like, sometimes God's a literal God, and he's going to take that, and he's going to make that change for you, and it's not how we always want it. But so one of the things
it was a prayer. We prayed that very thing. And like I said, we didn't have a lot of those moments where we prayed on a topic that we really needed in our lives, because we were so busy. And I know it's an excuse, is really what it was. We're just busy. She's going this way, I'm going this way. We'll meet up when the kids have their event. And it was a chaotic season in our life. A lot. I say that, but a lot of good things were happening around us. But it was just one of those things where, like, man, Lord, something's got to change. Help us to see what needs to change.
Right, and sometimes we get so involved in ministry or just, providing, because, I mean, you had many outlets. I mean, I teach, I coach too. There was a time where I was coaching 12 months out of the year, and It was busy. It's a lot. I mean, I went straight from cross country into swim team, back into track, and then I go back into swim team, and then we do it again. And having a family and trying to do all that, it's a lot, and it kind of shapes us or changes how we kind of view things, because we just get into that. We give to God. We never lose that, but we kind of get into that business mentality. And I mean, we get busy, but God wants us to reshape He doesn't want us to stop serving Him, but He wants us to shape our priorities. Yeah. And that's kind of what you had to go through. So were there ever any moments, I may be jumping the gun, I don't know, I'm just going to ask some questions. Were there ever any moments when you were going through this, either through the physical therapy, laying in the hospital, something that you would see, either you would call them maybe your defining moments, where either God showed you a promise or God just kept reminding you that He's in control, that He's got this, or just something that reaffirmed your faith? Or maybe there was a time where you didn't, you lost something and you were like, I don't know, Lord. What were some of those moments or times? Between
the fall and day 2, those first couple of days, would have been the uncertain days for me. Now I think I kind of talked about that a little bit, like just not having that faith and really just looking more at myself and the natural in that moment instead of saying, okay, Lord, what can you do? And just giving that to him. But I'll focus more on the part of that question where you said, was there a defining moment where things just kind of turned? And there was, day 2 when they stood me up. Okay. They stood me up, and it was like something in my heart just began to connect. Just this faith began to arise. That's the best way to explain it. So, okay, Lord, if you got me this far, man, let's just go all the way, right? Like just a complete healing, complete restoration of my body, and I began to believe for that in that moment. But the biggest defining moment, and I'm glad you asked this because I didn't know if this was going to come out. It was the night 3. I'm laying in ICU, and nobody can stay with you at night on the ICU floor, and so everybody went to their hotel rooms, and so kissed my wife, and she left, and she was the last one there, and I go into night 3, and it's lonely, man. I mean, it's just you and the nurse and God. And I finally dozed off. I was having a hard time sleeping. I was coming off a lot of those medications because I started refusing to take some of them just because I'm just not a big meds guy. And so there was just, it was discomfort and just a lot of stuff going on. And I got to say it was around 3 a.m. just because I remember looking at the clock and it was 2 something and I kind of drifted off. But I had a vision, dream vision, because I was kind of in and out, like I said, it was a hard time sleeping. But I had a vision, man, and the Lord come into that ICU room, angelic, but I just felt like it was the Lord. And man, it was just like I seen him pick my broken body up. And some people are like, man, this is crazy. And I just believe what I seen, and it was so real, it was so vivid. He come in, and he picks my body up, and it's like I'm seeing it as third person. And I'm naked, and I'm draped over his arms, and he just kind of turns around, the Lord carrying me in his arms, and walks off into this thick, dense fog. And I remember just kind of coming back, and just it was so real. It was so real to me. That it was in that moment that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, man, the Lord's got me. The Lord is going to restore my body. And, but now from that point on, I mean, that was a faith builder right there, my friend. Like you wake up from that and you're like, whoa, God, I remember crying. Yeah. And they were very emotional. I remember crying and just saying, Lord, thank you. Like I believe, I put my faith in you, God. Whatever this is, I'm gonna preach to the world. Whatever platform you give me, I'm telling everybody about what you're doing. And so it's obviously this is why I'm here. But so it was in that same night because I couldn't sleep after that. So again, this is the defining moment for me. That same night, I'm having conversation, man, with the Lord. And the Lord asked me, in my heart, he asked me, he said, how would you respond if I never healed you? And I couldn't answer that question because I was still just like, just from that whole night, the encounter I had with the Lord. But he asked me that question, and that question has resonated with me ever since that night. And I think here's, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't. I wish I did. But I believe he asked me that question to let gratitude and thankfulness remain in my heart till the day I see him face to face.
Right.
Because that question is the very question, because I don't know how I would respond. I don't know how I would react. And he knew that. The Lord knows that. But every time I reflect on that question, when he asked me, after he already, obviously I encountered the presence of the Lord that night. So he asked me that, but I believe he asked me that so that thankfulness and gratitude would forever grip my heart, and I would never forget that. And so I go back to that a lot.
Man.
I go back to that night. The night of day 3 was a defining moment in my life, and that vision.
Wow. Just amazing. And I think that a lot of people who have ever been through a hardship, we had a podcast, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks before Christmas that we talked about the importance of suffering, and people don't realize the importance that comes from suffering in a place that it puts you mentally and spiritually, that God puts you in a place where you have to rely on Him. You have to, I kind of give my testimony in that podcast, so here we are, 2023 beginning. We're January 2023.
Yeah.
And the Lord has miraculously healed you. You've obviously used your platforms to give Him glory. I've seen it firsthand. I've heard it firsthand. And I've seen the video, which is powerful. Oh gosh, it's powerful.
Amen.
Now you're coaching. You're heavily involved in the FCA. And so give us a little insight of what your healing, okay, is driving your ministry now.
Yeah, so it was definitely a shift that took place in our home. Like we hit on a couple of those. One of the main things was just being present, being a present husband, being a present father, and but there was more that come out of that. Which is your first ministry. Which is our, amen, come on, which is our first ministry, is our home and our kids and our marriage. But there was, FCA came along, which being in sports, being a coach, this is my 15th year teaching, coaching at some level of athletics. Grew up playing sports in Ohio. I was a collegiate basketball player in Ohio and then transferred to a small school in Iowa. So sports has always been a part of my life. And so when we came out of that, I got to meet an individual because of this testimony, and he was the regional director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And he was just like, wow, man, that's an amazing testimony. And just, it touched his heart, and he just wanted to know me more. He wanted to know my wife. He just wanted to know us and what we were about, what we stood for. So his name was Mike Litz, phenomenal dude, just a great guy, lives in Jackson, Missouri. And one thing led to another conversation, went to another conversation, and led to him offering us to come on staff with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so that's really where our heart is in 2023, man. It's just being able to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to within the schools, because God's given FCA, really has. He's given Fellowship of Christian Athletes favor with local school districts to be able to come in and connect with coaches and athletes and share the gospel.
Right, man. And so FCA is a phenomenal ministry. Program ministry. It really is a ministry. Because it is the next generation, that you were pouring into, that's so vitally important. That's one of the biggest things about being a father, is you're raising the next generation to serve God and to love God and to be godly young men and women. And you get to do that on a scale with the platform that you have, different than other people do. Give us a little insight there.
Well, it's definitely a platform that naturally attracts our generation, our culture. Tonight, as we're recording this, is the National Football, college championship, and millions of people are watching that game. And it's one of those things where sports love it, hate it, like it, not. I mean, it's what our culture, it loves sports, more than not. Right. And so it's a great avenue to evangelize and reach people that may never step foot into the door of a church, that may never step foot into a, what we would call a traditional setting of where, where worship happens and different things. So it's a great tool. It's a great avenue to lead people and point people to Jesus Christ. And it's definitely something that I've really found myself enjoying, simply because I love sports, but man, I love Jesus, and I know what the Lord has done in my life, and I know the impact that a coach can make, on a youngster, and it's definitely a road of influence that I think even Billy Graham mentioned. Man, it's a coach is going to impact so many more people than just your average person throughout a lifetime, and it's just a great way to reach people with the gospel.
Absolutely. I remember a testimony, and I'm a big football guy, I remember listening to Tim Tebow, and he was talking about playing in the national championship, and you probably heard this before, but he had his eye paint underneath his eye. He had put John 3:16, and that night, John 3:16 had been Googled. I can't remember how many millions of times. You kind of like you said, you love it or hate it, but people are drawn to sports. People are drawn. The culture has cultivated this sports mentality, and so not to use it to our advantage, as Christians, to use that platform would be very foolish. Especially when you get to like a high school, junior high level where kids are beginning to that's when they're the most crucial. They're beginning, they're getting their, they're feeble, they're learning, they're kind of trying to learn their place in the world, where they fit in.
They're trying to find their identity. Yeah.
Yes. And so I think it's awesome. I love the FCA, Coach Seaver's here in Poplar Bluff. He does FCA at the high school. Fields of Faith, this, all this stuff. I think that is absolutely phenomenal. What you guys are doing for our youth, because love it or hate it. When you're a coach, you're around kids who don't go to church, who have no godly influence, and to be the influence. And it's not about shoving Jesus down their throat all the time. It's about being a godly example. Your influence, just being around them, will change lives. And and it's so amazing to have godly people in these coaching positions to mold. Even Greg Kukl, I'm a big apologist. Greg Kukl talks about when he, in his book Tactics, about just putting a pebble in their shoe. It's not about changing their lives in one conversation. It's about putting a pebble in their shoe in their theology. And, when somebody doesn't believe in Jesus, and they have XYZ for the reasons, just putting that pebble. And it's kind of the same way with coaching. It's not about just transforming their lives. It's just about being that pebble, being that influence. When they move off to college, they always remember, man, I had this coach. I had this coach one day. I remember this one time he said this, and just having that there constantly. And, man, it's awesome. Kyler, he's a coach. He coached swim. My boy swam for him for a little bit. And,
awesome.
Phenomenal coaches. We've got some good coaches here, and it's marvelous.
It is, man. And it's, it's one, like you said, just to kind of wrap up that answer, that question you asked me, and just kind of the season that we're in as far as our ministry, FCA, and coaches and athletes. And we all know for the most part, man, coaching, it's a lot like pastoring these days, man. There's so much pressure. There's so much critiquing, and social media just made it, just took it to a whole nother level in that regard. And so, being a coach and being an athlete, you know that pressure, that pressure to win or whatever it is, play Johnny just because of his family and who they are, or whatever, there's so much, but being able to just be there for a coach, that's one of the biggest things too right now with this ministry, is being able to equip and empower a coach to be and know and understand that they have such an influence over that team that's going to last well after their lifetime, because it's so generational. And you hit it spot on. Just to give an example, I had this young man, phenomenal young man, come from a broken home, but never let that stop him. Come to know Jesus when he was a freshman in high school. I had the privilege of baptizing him when he was a freshman, and so I just knew him all through high school. Ended up being a phenomenal trackster, just a track athlete, and just went to state, placed in state in 400. And is running track now in college. And so when you said that just a little bit ago, it reminded me, I got a text message last week and it said, "Hey coach, here's my track schedule for my freshman year in college. I hope you can make one. I know you're busy, but would love to see you. And, just want you to know I'm here because of the impact you had on my life." And so you get a text message like that. And it takes everything that's maybe going wrong in your life in that moment, and you're like, oh gosh. But you read that and you're like, come on, man, that right there, that's worth it, And he's living for the Lord. He's being an example for Christ, right there in a college, which Lord knows we need. We need Absolutely. some bold people to rise up and to live for Christ in the middle of that and not shy away from that. So, yeah, man, it's a blast. I'm loving this season, but went through a lot to get to this point.
Right. Kyler, you got any questions for him before we wrap this up?
No, I'm just still like the awesome story that you have. I'm just glad that you're sharing it. I mean, thank you so much for everything that just coming
Amen.
on here and letting us be just a tiny portion of what your ministry is turning into.
Yes. It is a humbling experience. Yeah, it's a humbling experience to be able to be a platform for you to spread, what God has done in your life and your testimony. And God truly has ministered in a amazing way. I mean, I don't really know what words to use there, but in just such an awesome way. And the fact that you're able to take that and be such a vital influence on the next generation, not only in your
Amen.
children, but in the children of others, being a teacher, I talk all the time in my men's group. I tell people all the time, people don't understand, men especially do not understand. God has given us every man a measure of influence. And whether you use that for good or you use it for bad, there is no neutral. And so, but when you put that influence that God has given you back in God's hands, He multiplies it, and He uses it in such a way that we can never understand, or we can never grasp a hold of in our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's awesome to see what God's doing in your life, through your family, through FCA, and through coaching. And man, I tell you, brother, I love you, and I appreciate you being on here. This is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and it's great to be able just to be a part of what God's doing in your guys' life and this podcast. And I'm kind of a newbie to this podcast stuff. We just launched one. We're actually on our season 2. We have a podcast called Above the Game, and so we just we talk about sports, life, talk about, Jesus, and make conversation out of that. But it's really great, man.
Absolutely. And what did you say that? Let's promote that podcast a little bit on here. Where can we find it? What did you say it was called again?
Yeah, so it's called Above the Game podcast, and it just talks about, obviously it's directed towards the sports audience, but it's ran underneath the umbrella of FCA, and me and another coach. I got a co-host of Darren Scott. Darren Scott coached at Jackson High School for like 23 years. Got 400 plus wins, and he came on as co-host, and man, we just been trying to talk about just current events in sports and just topics that coaches and athletes deal with, on a daily, weekly basis, and just interject Jesus into that conversation and talk about faith and all that good stuff. But man, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on all the platforms for that. But yeah, it's called Above the Game.
Awesome, man. Well, there you go, listeners. You've got another podcast to listen to. Mike Vipperman is a real deal. I hope you get out there and you check out his podcast and you listen to it. Again, Mike, I want to thank you for being on here. I want to thank you for being a part of this and being able to share your testimony. Kyler and I really appreciate your authenticity and your willingness to serve the Lord. And it's
Amen.
Always nice to see another man striving to serve the Lord.
Yeah. Come on.
Well, yeah, so we're going to wrap this up here real quick. Listeners, go out, check out his podcast, all that good stuff. If you need to get a hold of us, you can find us on, you can email us, realmen@palaceofpraise.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Real Men Ministries, Real Men Talk. Hopefully you share this podcast. This is a testimony that needs to be heard. It needs to be heard. People need to hear what the Lord is doing in people's lives. And as always, I want to end it in prayer. Holy Spirit, teach us to be leaders of our homes, of our communities, and of our churches. And teach us to be godly, courageous men. In Jesus' name, amen.
You've been listening to Real Men Talk, brought to you by Palace of Praise Church in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. If you would like to get in touch with us, shoot us an email, realmen@palaceofpraise.com, or visit our website at palaceofpraise.com. If you're a man age 16 and up and would like to be a part of the conversation, join us at the Palace of Praise every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. If you don't have a home church, consider joining us for worship on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Palace of Praise is located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. New episodes of Real Men Talk drop every Thursday at 5 p.m. You can find us at iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Anchor.fm, Amazon, and more. Real Men Talk is a production of Palace Media Service.
Real Men Talk has been brought to you this week by RLP Construction in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. For commercial contracting of all types, see RLP Construction today. And by the Jeweler's Bench in Poplar Bluff. They are your one-stop shop for all your fine jewelry needs. They also do in-house repair and are your Citizen Watch dealer. Make sure to thank our sponsors for bringing you Real Men Talk.
If you want to join in the conversation, join us on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. We gather with other like-minded Christian brothers to discuss hard-hitting topics that affect men on a daily basis and use a biblical approach to overcome common strongholds that affect our families. We show men the importance of being the spiritual leader of their home and what it means to be a real man in the eyes of Christ. Join us at the Palace of Praise, located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. We meet in room 400 every Thursday. Come be a part of the discussion.